Hey y'all. So let's talk about if you have to give your phone to USCIS, to the embassy officer at the time of your interview. Okay. So if you have a USCIS interview or an interview at the embassy, do you have to give the officer your phone? Right? Can the officer request your phone? Do you have to give it to them? And that is what we're going to be talking about today because guess what? This is a question that people have all the time when I'm preparing my clients for interviews. They want to know, do I bring my phone? Do I leave it in the car? What is the procedure? So let's talk about it. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lillian Chukura, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. So, you have a USCIS interview, you have an interview at the embassy, and you want to know, do I bring my phone? Do I not bring my phone? Typically, I tell my clients, you can bring your phone, but just know that the officer may choose to ask you to see the phone. Okay. The officer can ask to see your phone. Okay. They can ask you, you can then respond yes or no. And depending on your response and what's on your phone, the officer can make a decision. Okay. So let's start with what situations would lead the officer to asking for your phone, because that's really key here, because it's not every single interview, it's not every single situation leads to an officer being like, okay, let me see your phone. Right. I've been to, at this point, shoot, almost 100 or more interviews, and the officer has only asked for a phone one time, right? Has only asked my client to see their phone one time. So it's really important that you know that this is not a typical practice, right? This is not something that they do all the time. It's just depending on the situation, because there's situations where it's like, yeah, I need to see the phone, right? So let's talk about that. If you go to your interview if you go to your interview and the officer is asking you questions, oh, do you have a bank account together? And you're like, yes, we do. And the officer is like, okay, can I see copies of your statement? You're like, oh, I don't have copies, but I do have the app on my phone. You just opened it up to the for the officer to ask you now, can I see your phone? Right? Because at first the officer is just asking you, do you have a joint bank account? But by you saying, yes, I do, and it's on my phone, now the officer can ask you, oh, can I see your phone so that I can, can you go on the app on your phone so that I can see? And then it's up to you to say yes or no. But just know, most of the time in those situations, if you say no, the officer is going to look at that negatively. It's not fair, but that's just what it is. Okay. If you're saying that you have specific evidence of your relationship in your phone, and the officer asks you to show them that specific evidence of your relationship, and you're not willing to show it, it is going to raise red flags for the officer, because they're going to wonder, is it that it doesn't actually exist and you are just telling them that it's on your phone so that they don't have to ask you for it. So it's really important that as you go into your interview, that you're prepared to answer certain questions and understand fully well that your answers have consequences, right? Your actions during the interview, whatever you're telling the officer, they can use that against you. The second you walk into the room, the second the officer calls you and you are walking in with him or her, you're being interviewed. Okay. Yes, they don't really start asking questions until you're sworn in, but they're watching everything. Even before you're called in, let's say you're doing a marriage based application and you come in with your spouse, you two are sitting down, they be paying attention, right? They pay attention to who's in the room, how they're behaving, all of those things. So it's really important that you You make sure that as you're going through your interview preparation, that you're thinking about all of these things. So, first question I get, can the officer ask for the phone? Yes, if it is relevant, right? If you bring up something that makes the officer want to see the phone or have to see the phone, then it's relevant. But if you tell the officer, yes, we have a joint bank account, but I do not have copies of it, I can go to the bank and get copies. Okay. That's not going to lead to the officer asking to see your phone, right? But by you saying, yes, I have a joint bank account and I usually log in on my phone, I can show you on my phone, right? Now the officer has, grounds to be like, hey, let me see the phone, right? Let me see what's in there. If you go to the interview and the officer is asking questions about how you and your spouse communicate, and you say, we communicate by text. Mostly, we don't really call each other that much, but text, we do a lot of texting. And the officer says, can I see, do you have printouts of your text? And you say no. The officer may then ask you, do you have your phone on you? You say yes. The officer can say, can you show me some text between you and your spouse? And mind you, when the officer has your phone in their hand, they may start clicking around. Okay. Just because they ask you for, the text messages between you and your spouse, and you're willing to give them the phone and open it directly to that, doesn't mean that the officer may not click around and look at other messages. All right. If you are getting text while you're in the interview, and that pops up while the officer has your phone, and if it's a text that is not beneficial to your application, that's a problem. Okay. So it's really important that you are aware that the officer can ask for your phone. And once they have your phone in their hands, they don't have to stick to the page that you open for them. Okay. If something pops up, they can look at it, they can click around. You already gave them access to your phone. Right. So if you're worried about the officer looking at your phone, don't bring your phone. Leave your phone in the car. Right. Um, like I said before, refusing to show the phone, dependent on the situation, right? There's situations where it's like, I would argue with the officer about seeing the phone. However, there's certain situations where it is relevant. And when you block an avenue for the officer to get relevant information, that can lead to the officer making a decision in your case that is not beneficial to you. So what I tell my clients is, if you know you communicate by text, right? If you know you have pictures on your phone of relevant things, like, oh, we went on a trip and we took a lot of pictures, print it out. Oh, we text a lot, print it out. Because once you have it in your hand, right? Once you have a physical copy of what's in your phone that you would want the officer to see, then you present. But if you're telling the officer in the interview, oh, well, everything is on my phone and my phone is right here, the officer can ask to see those things in your phone. Okay. This is, typically this is not a problem, but people do have privacy issues and you don't want that violated. Another thing that typically comes up is if the officer is looking at your phone and they see, things that make them question your admissibility. For example, if there's text on your phone talking about, oh, when can I drop off this, weed to you, right? Now the officer is going to question whether you have partaked in marijuana. And if you have, that is an inadmissibility issue. Okay. So that means you have had possession at some point. And some officer some officers can use that against you. So it's really important that you know this, okay? If you're watching this and you're getting value, make sure to hit the like button. And if you have questions about this topic or any other immigration topic that you want to ask me, go ahead and put it in the comments, because, I do these lives for you and I want to make sure that I'm answering your questions and that you are getting proper immigration information. Okay. Now, what I tell my clients, like I said, print out whatever you think it's in the phone that you may want to show the officer. So if you have pictures, if you have text messages, if you have emails that may be relevant, bank statements, if you only access your bank through your phone, most banks have a link in there where you can download the statements and print them out. So it's really, in most situations, let me put it that way, in most situations, an officer will not have a reason to look at your phone. However, if you're not prepared with those evidence and you're telling the officer, my phone, my phone, my phone, the officer may eventually call you on it and say, let me see the phone. So be aware of that. And the reason I'm doing this video on this particular topic is because someone was recently asking me about it as we were preparing for their interview. They're like, should I bring my phone? Should I not bring my phone? Like, you can bring your phone, you can leave it in the car, right? It's really up to you on what you do as far as the phone is concerned. But if you have concerns about privacy, about the officer being able to see things in your phone, I would say leave it in the car, right? Don't bring it with you. But also, if there's nothing in your phone that's, negative for your case, there's no point. You can just bring your phone. Most of my clients bring their phones, and we have not had an issue. So, like I said, in my almost 10 years of doing this, I've only had one situation where an officer asked to see a client's phone. And that was specifically, again, because the client mentioned the phone, right? Mentioned that the information the officer wanted or is asking for is in the phone. So, of course, if you're saying this in the phone, the officer will want to see that. Another place where it can come in is if you're telling the officer, oh, I speak to, my spouse's family, or I speak to this person on a, daily basis. The officer may want to be like, okay, show me, right? If you're speaking to your spouse's family on a daily basis, the officer may ask you to show them proof, right? Let me see your phone. What's their number? And then they can look at the call history right there. So it's really important. That's why I say it's one thing to have your phone or not to have your phone. But the key here is you want to avoid the officer getting to the point where they're asking to see your phone. Okay. You really want to avoid that. So, how do you avoid that? By giving them the information that you want to show them that's in your phone, printing it out. Okay. Having physical copies of the things that you want to show them about your relationship or about your case, because that's the only thing that's going to really make sure that that doesn't come up. Because the more you mention that things are on your phone, the more the officer is going to, be like, you know what, let me call them on it and let me take a look at their phone. So remember, it is not about, whether you have incriminating things on your phone. It's not about that. The officer is going to click around. And if you're worried about that, leave it in your car. Okay. Don't bring it into the interview with you. But on the flip side of that, right, is you not bringing your phone to the interview a red flag for the officer. Does that make sense? I hope that's making sense, because one thing is, yes, you don't have to bring your phone. And the other is, well, most federal buildings allow you to bring your cell phone in. And if you don't bring it in, would the officer think that's a red flag? Especially if you say that you mostly communicate with people through text, through WhatsApp, and things like that. So why wouldn't you have your phone on you if you use your phone all the time, right? It's really a fine line, and in most situations, for majority of my clients, they're bringing their phone, they're sitting there, they're playing games on their phones, they're texting family, they're doing work, for the people that work virtually, they're working while they're waiting for their interview. So it's normal, right? Normal to have your phone. Just know that USCIS can ask you for your phone. The embassy can ask you for your phone. It's one of those things that is really like, everyone wants to know the answer, and there's no right or wrong. It's just if there's things in your phone, if you have like a non-traditional relationship, right? Maybe you're polyamorous and you don't want that to raise, red flags about your main relationship. You may want to, you know, not have that on your phone in case the officer wants to see that. Because most officers are not going to ask you, oh, what's the dynamics of your relationship. However, if you are in a polyamorous relationship and the officer is looking at your phone and looks and sees that you're also texting someone else, and it's in a romantic way, red flags. Okay, now you have to explain to the officer your situation, right? So again, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just I want you to be aware so that when you're in the room, you are prepared to answer questions. Okay, and my key here is print out your evidence. Do not rely on your evidence being on your phone, because the officer will then want to see your phone, right? If you print it out, that's actually the best, because what happens is, yes, the officer looks at your phone, they can take notes on what they saw, but they may want printouts of what's on your phone, which means they're going to send you a request for evidence just for the printouts. Like, you might as well print it out ahead of time so that when you get there, you're giving the officer all your evidence and they can just put it in the file, approve your case, and move it along and not be asking you questions about your phone. Okay. Like I said earlier, if you have questions, please put them in the comments. This can be about this topic or anything else immigration wise. All right. Put them in the comments. If I don't see any questions, then we can wrap it up. However, if you're here and you have questions, put them in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay and you have questions, put them in the comments. I do go back and respond to those. And sometimes I respond to them in a video. So go ahead and ask me your questions. And for those that are just joining me, the answer to the question of can an officer look through your phone at an immigration interview is a yes. Okay. The answer to that question is yes. However, it only comes up if there's a need for it, right? If it actually matters. The officer, you're not walking into the interview and the officer is immediately asking you for your phone. That's not how a typical interview works, unless the officer already has red flags for your case, and one of those red flags is communication red flags. So, or you're in the interview and you're telling the officer that all the evidence for your case is in your phone and you can just show them the evidence. However, once the officer has your phone in their hand, they're not just looking at what you showed them. They're, if you're on your photos, they're going to be sliding through all your photos. If you send, if it's the text, they may look at other text that's there. So just know that whatever triggers the officer to look at your phone, once they have your phone in their hand, they're not limited to that. Okay. They can ask you variety of things, and they can scroll through and be like, okay, who is this on your phone? Okay. Or the other part is they may ask your spouse about the people on your phone so that it becomes a more um, interview, like, okay, does your spouse know what you're doing on your phone, who you're talking to, all those things. So really be prepared for that in case it comes up, but it is rare, and only in certain situations does it happen. All right, let's see. So we have a question from Sue. My friend has VAWA application pending and an I-485 for her and her son, but the child's dad has an approved I-130. What can he do? I'm a little confused then. Um, if the I-130 is for the son, was approved for the son, the dad can also file, then the son can file another I-485 based on the approved I-130. So they can have multiple green card applications pending at the same time, as long as it's based on different petitions. All right. How long does it take once you have submitted your application for removal of conditions to give you actual green card? Great question. Right now, it is taking a lot of time. Um, the ones we have from like 2021 are just now getting interviews or approvals. So it is taking at least 2 to 3 years just for that. Okay. Um, it's not, it's nothing to do with you. It's just USCIS is now prioritizing the removal of conditions. So it is taking some time. I've had people file, and before they got to the interview, the marriage broke down because it's been like, you know, 2 3 years of waiting for this interview. And by the time we get to the interview, the marriage already broken down. And now we have to change it from a joint filing to a divorce filing. It's a whole thing. But yes, it's taking time. It has nothing to do with your specific application. Everyone's application is on the same track, and that's 2 to 3 years. And sometimes, depending on how much evidence you sent in, they may be able to approve it without an interview as well. A trick that I mentioned, I think in my last video, the one before that, for getting your removal of conditions to speed up and be approved in less than the 2 to 3 years, is if you are still in a marital relationship with your spouse, you're still living with your spouse, you're still building a life with your spouse, and you have had your conditional for 3 years, you can apply for citizenship. Okay. So citizenship from the time you got your 2 year card, right? 3 years from the time you got your 2 year card, you can apply for citizenship. And that typically will speed up the process. So if you apply for removal of condition on year 2 of having your green card, on year 3, you can apply for citizenship. And then typically by year 4, you're getting your citizenship. However, without that, you're probably getting your citizenship on year like 5 of having your green card. So it really depends on your particular situation. Remember, you can only do the 3 year citizenship filing if you are still in a marital relationship with your spouse, meaning that you are still living together, you're still building a life together, there's no separation, then you can do that. Um, Sue, I'm going to need more details, okay? Is it that the dad, someone filed, okay, let me just make sure. Tell me if I'm correct. Did someone file an I-130 for the dad, and that I-130 for the dad was approved? If that's the case, then the child is not included in that if the dad is in the US and the person that filed for the dad is a US citizen. Okay. If the application for the dad was filed by a US citizen, the child is not included in that. The child will need their own I-130 petition to be approved and all of that. Okay. So it's really important that you just you can clarify, but I just want to make sure that that is clear. The child can be included in the VAWA application with the mom, right? But not an I-130 application that's filed for the father. Okay. They may be able to qualify, if it's a step parent that's a US citizen, they may be able to file for them under that, but I would need more information on that. Let's see. What are the major requirements needed to file for citizenship once you have your green card for 2 years? Okay, it's green card for 3 years. Okay, 3 years, not two. The major requirements is that one, you have your green card for 3 years, you have good moral character, you have lived continuously physically in the US for at least half of that time, so at least a year and a half, and you have not been outside of the US for a year. Okay, so it's really important that if that's the route you want to take, that you're actually physically in the US for the 3 years, and that you file your taxes, right? You do everything that a permanent resident is supposed to do legally. So one of those things is making sure that you file your taxes every year. So as long as you're meeting those requirements, then you would qualify. And of course, for the to be able to file in 3 years of having your green card, you have to maintain your marital relationship because you'll need to present evidence that your marriage is still valid, right? Which is the same evidence as the removal of conditions. All right. So if you have any questions, let's see. All right. The child has an approved I-130 that the dad filed for him. I was told that two I-485s cannot be filed. That's not accurate, but that's not accurate because it's based on two completely different bases. So you cannot file two two 485s for the same beneficiary by the same petitioner, right? You can't do that. One second, y'all. We have a person here that needs to go. Um, but yeah, you want to make sure that whether it is a 485, that it's not the same petitioner and it's not the same beneficiary. That's not the case here. The case here is that you have a 485 that's based on VAWA and a 485 that's based on an I-130. It's two completely different bases, so you can't have both of those going at the same time. All right. If anyone else has questions, please put them in the comments. I am here to answer your questions. But those are really great questions. Thank you so much. Those are great questions. And it's great when people ask questions because other people learn. Okay, that's why I do like the Q&As. Even if I'm doing like a teaching thing at the beginning, I always try to do the Q&As at the end because people always learn something. Because y'all have great questions. You do. All right, another great question. Is it possible to file for your child once your 2-year green card or 3 years in the marriage? The second you got your green card, you could have filed for the child because you have the same rights as someone that has a 10-year green card. All right. Your 2-year green card, the only limitation on your 2-year green card is that you have to file the removal of conditions. That's the only condition on it. You don't have to wait 2 years. You don't have to wait 3 years of marriage. The second you get your green card, even if it's a conditional one, even if it's just the 2-year one, you can file for your children. Okay. So there is no waiting 2 years or 3 years before you can file. All right. Perfect. Um, any other questions? And remember, if you're getting value out of this, so please hit the like button. It just lets people know that this is a video they should check out. And if you have a question, put them in the comments. If you're watching this on the replay and you have questions, remember, put them in the comments. I do go back and respond to your questions. So please go ahead and ask away. All right. All right. Frederick, I will definitely do that. I will actually put that in the comments so that you can see it. But yes, I will definitely put that in the comments so that if you want to contact me, you can. All my contact information is always in the description to the videos. However, I will put it in the comments as well. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask me. All right. So I don't see any additional questions. Thank you all so much for joining me. And I will we'll do more of these. We have Q&As at the end of the month where you can just come and ask me questions. You can watch my prior Q&As. There's so much information in them because people have so many questions, and I want to be that space for you all where you can come and ask me questions. I truly appreciate you, and I will be seeing you next time. Have a great rest of your day and a great week